Yes, I think we're live on YouTube, and there is my cat. Um, so welcome everybody watching on live on YouTube. We are about to start this Haumea gathering. So yes, officially welcome. This is super wonderful and exciting. I am so happy all of you are here with us, and welcome to everybody watching anytime in the future. So today this is, I mean, truly so exciting for me. I am here with very, very, very good friends, Keone Hanalei, Julia Balaz, and Natasha Kealoha, and we are here with all of you because we're all feeling this calling to be deeply listening and present with the being we call Haumea. And there are so many reasons I felt called to bring us together today for this. To me, it feels like we're being supported to radically come into our own divine truth, our own alignment with divine truth, and come into how we feel called to be with life and with this being and with each other. So I'm going to hand it over to Keone in a second to mostly hold this space for us. But before I do that, I just want to say a couple other things, which are there's a lot of conversation about how astrology is changing. And so, in particular, I want to really acknowledge Pam Gregory and Heather Ensworth for both being part of that, holding that intention that we all have this opportunity to be part of the changing of astrology. And what I feel so strongly is that we literally are the change in the world, and we literally are the change in astrology or in anything, right? And what we're doing here today, for me, is how astrology is changing, or it's one of the ways astrology can be changing. So my real intention is that this is a time for us to be with Haumea, but it's also a time for us to take a step back and practice this way of deep listening to the beings of the cosmos, to each other, to life, and to come out of a way that I feel like astrology has been for so long, that can be, not always, but can be pretty objectifying of, even the Kuiper Belt beings, like Haumea, are often called Kuiper Belt objects. So we call it that thing out there that's doing a thing to me, or maybe will give me a thing, right? We want something. We commodify the cosmos and we commodify the earth, and I think for me, a humongous way that I feel really called to mm, undo a lot of patterning in myself has really comes down to this switch into deep listening and deep honoring of everything in existence, including my cat, including everything. So that's my really one and only intention today, is that um, I do what I can to hold this space of deep listening. And with that, Keone, please go for it.
Mahalo. Thank you so much, Martha. I want to give you a special thanks for assembling all of us today, and specifically so that we can honor Haumea, this energy of Haumea, the physical body that is Haumea, as you just shared in our Kuiper Belt, and sort of what it represents to us individually and perhaps even collectively. We've assembled with us Julia Balaz, Natasha Kealoha, in addition to you, Martha, and myself, who has our own Ike or knowledge that we'd like to share about Haumea and its representation in not just our cosmos, but perhaps how it has influenced our collective as well. Um, I would love to assemble all of us in a way by uttering a very ancient 20,000-year-old prayer that we can honor Haumea together, and also, wanting to give consent to all of us who are present right now to be an authority, to be a receptacle of this energy of Haumea. And that although maybe there's four of us that are speaking here with you today, but on the call right now, I see 235 people who also have some authority when it comes to your relationship with Haumea. And so offering that consent to all of us to be this conduit for Haumea at this time. If I may utter this 20,000-year-old prayer, I will ask all of us to position our hands in what is known as ku'ulike. In Hawaiian, ku'ulike means to stand tall, and we're referring to energetically. And the position of ku'ulike is our right hand places on our heart. This is representative of our uhane, or our internal masculine. Our left hand is placed on our na'au, or our sacral, and that's representation of our internal feminine, the unihipili. And this is the proper position to have our hands in as we utter a sacred prayer. And I will also perhaps invite all of us to maybe close our eyes too, so that we can really feel the transmission of this. I will be speaking in the ancient Mu dialect, and then I will translate it in English as well. In honor of Haumea, he inono Haumea. Ikshe at naina ate apo, te kai mai la a rihi o leva, ikshel harat matveis. Iho mai taua leva leva, mere ra anui nui, et havait, et haida, et kaido, e lat na koa I lainta, Shakespeare rat naua, laka vai, ma ra haumea. From the junction, to fasten the hoop, the stars still stand in the upper space, and the transcendence remains wide and free. Coming is a dark cloud in the rainbow, at the point of Hawaii, of Haida, of Hokkaido. Courage is now required to become free of the involvement, breaking away as the water in reverence of Haumea. Aloha ma, aloha ma, aloha ma. Mahalo. Aloha ma means self-reflective love. My name is Keoni Hanalei. I live in Hawaii, specifically on the island of Maui. I was raised by my grandmother, Kawiki Onalani, who was a well-known makaula, or mystic, on the island of Maui. And I was so blessed to be reminded and received of my entire genealogy, which spans 1,017 generations, or 20,000 years. And what's so great about having access to a lineage that has been so well preserved is there's a lot of things that I can reference in that lineage. And of course, I can reference Haumea. One thing about Hawaiian culture that I do want to point out is that I come from a culture that we're never meant to have a written language, because a written language leaves too much room for mistranslation. We believe that there is life force, or mana, in our words. And when we speak a word, it's meant to be exchanged in real time in relationship with someone. And so transcribing words or information on a piece of paper or something else creates a kind of sterility that it extinguishes its mana, or life force. One of the unfortunate things I would say about coming from a culture that did not have a written language is that during the 18th and 19th century, and then into the 20th century, when there was so much interest in Hawaiian culture, we didn't have these documents that people could then take to the world and present my culture. And as a result, a lot of people made augmentations based upon what they prefer it to mean. And so a lot of what you see out in the world today about Hawaiian culture, it's not altogether true. There are, I would say, bits of it that feel very resonant. Like we can feel like it's getting to the crux of what it's wanting to share, but to a large extent, it's been mistranscribed. And Haumea is actually one of those. And today I would love to maybe share a little bit about Haumea that can support us in maybe reorienting into what the ancient Hawaiians and the Mu felt Haumea to represent, and perhaps what she still represents to us today. And so it's kind of like a coming home to Haumea. At the same time, I want to remind all of you that you are also an authority of Haumea. And so as I share, as Julia shares, and Natasha and Martha shares, the knowledge to which you hold and the relationship you have with Haumea, we also honor that as well. We are just a point of reference for all of you. Um, I want to start first by talking about something, a very practical aspect of Haumea. Haumea as the Kuiper Belt object, this deity, this dwarf planet, Haumea. What we can observe with our eyes and what through observation Haumea is actually symbolizing and telling us. There's a really beautiful transmission just in her planetary physical body. For many of you, you may know that Haumea actually has two moons, two moons. And what's so fascinating about these two moons is that they're on opposite sides of her. They're literally wedging Haumea. They're holding Haumea. Now, the two moons are actually the names of her daughters. One is Namaka and the other is Hi'iaka. Something to note about these two daughters of Haumea. Haumea has many children. She has many daughters and she has many sons. But these are the specific two daughters that are meant to accompany her as this planetary body. What's significant about that is Hi'iaka is her favorite. And not just her favorite, Hi'iaka is the favorite. I feel like in Hawaiian culture, everyone wants to talk about Hi'iaka, right? She's like the prettiest. She's the most desirable. She's the one where like the parents saved all the money so she can go to the best college. It's like, forget about the other kids. Hi'iaka, it's all about Hi'iaka. She also happens to be the youngest daughter. So she's the most cherished. We have Namaka, who is the other moon, and Namaka is first the oldest child, not just the oldest daughter, the oldest child of Haumea. And Namaka happens to be just that child that is sort of like Hi'iaka's sister. In fact, in many of the lore, when they talk about Namaka, they will literally say Hi'iaka's sister. And so what we have here, right? Do you see what's playing out here? We have polar opposites at either end of Haumea. They're functioning as alternating currents. Haumea is animated only because of her daughters. We have one pushing and one pulling, one attracting and one repelling. These alternating currents are creating a force that is actually sustaining the very animation of Haumea. This brings to question, right? What comes first, the egg or the chicken? So it's kind of interesting. So of course I felt into this. I'm like, wow, it's basically saying if we visually look at Haumea, it is saying that she exists only because of her daughters. What does this tell us? Lineage and legacy. Specifically because as humans, we exist or we experience lineage and legacy because of mitochondria. Now, mitochondria, I'm a gendered male, I have mitochondria, but my mitochondria is not transferable to my children. Mitochondria is only transferable through the mother. And so Haumea is already telling us about legacy and lineage and the importance of legacy and lineage and the perpetuation of a story. Now, when we go full circuit and full circle with Haumea, she's going to ask all of us to tell her our story. That's very important. What Haumea represents in the ancient culture, she can splinter into two very different things. She can either be the goddess of transfiguration, or she can be the goddess of reincarnation. And this might be a little funny to many of you. So if you have a lot of past lives, a lot of reincarnation, you likely very much resonate with Haumea because you have a lot of history together. Because you always have to confront her in order to reincarnate. She is the one. She has something called the Makalei, which is a magic stick. The magic stick is the reanimator. And a lot of people don't know this about the makale, and I want to talk about that a little bit, about what exactly the makale is as a reanimator. But for people who have many past lives, reincarnation, you will very much resonate with Haumea because you have a lot of history with her. It's kind of funny because I'm a first timer. A first timer means I don't have past lives here as a human being. Um, and there's some of us here. There's actually many of us here. And the way that I can gauge if someone is a first timer is if I ask them about Haumea. And it's kind of interesting because I'll ask Native Hawaiians, like, oh yeah, so tell me about Haumea. And they'll be like, who? I'll be like, you're Native Hawaiian. Haumea. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, the mom, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a first timer. You're a first timer. And so it's a way that I personally gauge if someone has many past lives is dependent on how close in relationship they are with Haumea. So I want to share this about the name Haumea before I go into the makale, and I'll make this brief. Haumea in my culture, the Hawaiian language, it is the only language in the world that is completely comprised of what we call kauna or reverse speak, meaning that every word or name, we can reverse it to find a deeper truth. And specifically with the kauna, we can find instructions on how to embody the word. It's the only language in the world. It's an engineering feat. It's kind of inconceivable how the designers of this language were able to code every word in reverse speak. So, of course, let's take Haumea and let's do the kauna. Let's reverse speak to see what the instructions are in order to embody the energy of Haumea. Now, if we do the reverse speak, we come to I mu aha. And I want to type that in the comments here just so you can visually see. I mu aha. Now notice that at the very end, we add the vowel. That's a law of my language. Every single word has to end in a vowel. It's representative of closing a circuit. And so we would add the first letter, the first vowel that was used. So that's why we come with I mu aha. That literally translates as prayer of reassembly. Prayer of reassembly. So it's talking about reanimation and reincarnation. She could represent this to you. We are being confronted by Haumea at the time of the hala, or what we could say death. And depending on how we respond to her, she will take that magic stick and she will either reanimate us or she will lead us into transfiguration. Because if we take that word, I mu aha, and we just reword it using the very same symbols, the very spelling as it's shared, if we just change the enunciation of it, we can say a emu aha, which then means recite a prayer of transfiguration. So depending on how we are confronted at the time of a death, either we are approaching with a prayer of reassembly, or we are reciting a prayer of transfiguration. And I want to explain why the makale, this magic stick, is so incredibly important in this process. In the story of Haumea, she has this thing called the makale, and it's a magic stick. And she can duplicate things. She can make things grow. She can create abundance. She can replace things that were lost, things like that with the makale. But there's a truth to the makale that many people don't know that maybe is a little sobering, in that makale literally means trap. Trap. Even when we do the reverse speak or the kauna of makale, we come at ie lakami, which means trapped in a dream. So no matter how we look at it, it means trap. And specifically being trapped in animation. Now, I don't want anyone to now have an aversion to Haumea. Because remember, she also is that to which can bring forth the transfiguration. Remember, it depends on how you are approaching her. What's your story? Remember, her whole planetary body with her two daughters and the lineage and the legacy, she loves story. She wants your story. She wants my story. And based upon how we present that story, we will either transfigure or we will reincarnate. So, with the Makale, here's something that I want to share about, like maybe even logistically about the Makale, in that the way that it's designed now and how it's represented is it's like a wand, right, you guys? And so, like, a wand is kind of like just a stick with like a stunted end. Okay, that would be representative of us living in a straight line, meaning we're locked in time. We're stuck in time. Do you guys know what the actual design of the proper makale is? It's the Ankh. It's the Ankh. So an Ankh has a handle, right? And then it has a circle. That represents a closed circuit. That represents a fulfillment event. Because if we take the word makale, and all we do, friends, is we take off the ma and we're left with kale, that means circle, circle. So this is a riddle. How can we restore the Ankh from that straight line? And that will determine if and when we transfigure or we reincarnate. And so here's the riddle, because this is the actual question that Haumea asked all of us at the time of the death, okay? And this is even documented. She says, He aha ka'u e hana ho ai. He aha ka'u hana ho ai. And that literally means, what shall I replicate? What shall I replicate? You guys, this is a riddle. This is a riddle. And when I say the proper response, that doesn't mean like, right, that we got to memorize that when we approach Haumea, like she's gonna know. Like she's the human lie detector. Like even if we like remember and we say it, she's like, right? So the riddle is when she asks us, what shall I replicate? The proper response is nothing. Nothing. I am fulfilled. I am complete. But that's not what many of us are responding when we tell her our story. When she says, what shall I replicate? Many of us say, more time so that I can retrieve what I lost. More time so that I can be with this person that I love. More time so that I can have that experience again. More time, more time, more time, more time, more time. And as a result, she's saying, as you wish, as you wish. Boom. Here's the unfortunate thing about that. She is the mother, right? She is the mother, meaning she has to come back with us. In other words, she becomes sacrificial. You know, the theme of feminine energy is that feminine energy is sacrificial. And I wonder why, right? Because as we say, I need more time, I got to get back there because I miss this person, or I've been wronged, I need more time to reconcile or retrieve what I lost. She says, without judgment, she says, of course, of course. With her makale, it's not the kale because it doesn't have the ankh now, it's the makale, as you wish, but she has to go back with you. She has to experience this. That's why I said, if Haumea, if you light up because of Haumea, you have a lot of history with her because you've been repeating with her over and over and over again. And so the proper response is when she asks you your story and says, what shall I replicate? The proper response is nothing. The greatest example, friends, I have for this, and I hope I don't trigger anyone when I say this, because I don't know, for some reason, Christianity really triggers people. But I'm gonna bring up Christianity here. But at the time of the crossing, this entity known as Jesus was confronted with Haumea. You know when that happened? Do you remember when Jesus was crucified on the cross? At a point, his head went back, his eyes turned white. He was in the death portal. His head flipped back, his eyes turned white, and from some primordial place, it wasn't the voice that we thought Jesus had through his human life. Some primordial voice came out of him and he said, Tetelestai, it is finished. That was his response to Haumea. She said, what shall I replicate? And he said, it is finished. Tetelestai. And as a result, what happened? He transfigured. And so this is a lesson to all of us. And I also want to share with everyone that, we can memorize that, what I just shared. We can memorize and be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to remember that when I see Haumea, I'm going to say nothing, right? But she's a lie detector. And so if we really feel, because this is non-judgment, right? Reincarnation, non-judgment. If there's something that we truly need to resolve and we need to come back again, be honest with her. Say, I can't let go of this person. I can't let go of Earth. I can't let go. Because with that honesty, she will say, send you back, of course, but she will also send you back into a world that will offer you the proper conditions in order for you to confront what you need to she's the mother. And like mothers, and I was raised by some very powerful women and a very powerful grandmother who true mothers will only empower you. Aw, that was my grandmother right there with the thumbs up. A true mother will empower you, right, to make the decisions on your own, trial and error. And so Haumea will supply you and support you with the proper conditions in your reincarnation so that you are confronted. You must be confronted with that so that when you do show up the next time and she says, here we are again. He aha ka'u hanaho ai. What shall I replicate? You're like, nothing. And then you experience the transfiguration event. And so, that's just what I want to share with all of you about my own perception of Haumea and what I can retrieve from my family's lineage, my mo'uku ao, and how Haumea has been preserved in Hawaiian culture, free of how it has been maybe mistranscribed, specifically with the makale. It's a trap. It literally means trap. And it's our job to turn that into the Ankh. It's our job to turn it into the Ankh, to close that circuit. With her planetary bodies, with her two daughters, right? These polar opposites. My advice to you, if you would like to be a scholar of Haumea, is get to know those moons just as much as Haumea. So Namaka and Hi'iaka. Know those just as much as Haumea, because remember, those two moons are what is animating Haumea. Right? That's why this is like the anomaly, the riddle. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's her daughters that are actually animating Haumea. And so for you, Haumea scholars, my invitation is remember once again the power of Hi'iaka and Namaka as well. So thanks, you guys. This was so fun. I'm so happy to have been able to share this and also a reminder once again that regardless of what I share and what Julia and Natasha and Martha share, you are also an authority of Haumea energy. And so whatever you hold and host is very true to you. We honor that as well. We are just a point of reference for all of you. I would love to also bring in our other wonderful speakers. And my dear sister, Natasha, I'd love to bring in. And something funny about Natasha. So Natasha and I are good friends. We're both like what you could consider former academic junkies, meaning we have a response for anything. I asked Natasha about Haumea, and it was crickets, which is very surprising for Natasha. After I recovered from my shock of Natasha not having a response, I'm like, oh my gosh, Natasha, you're a first timer. You're a first timer. So without any further ado, Natasha Kealoha, please share your ike of Haumea.
Aloha. Thank you so much, brother. Wow, I'm still like tingling from your transmission. So I'm gonna take a second just to come back into my body. Whew. All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. And it's so interesting, Keoni, that you had mentioned, Haumea being connected to it and being familiar with her means you've had a lot of familiarity with her. And I actually just asked my father-in-law, who is 100% Native Hawaiian, born and raised on Maui, yesterday if he knows anything about Haumea. His straight answer was no. That's all he said. And I was like, cool, cool. Okay. And now I love that you brought this information in, because that makes so much sense. He's just this amazing being, and that just his first time here on this planet experiencing it all. I love this. Okay. So also I just wanted to bring in Keoni, when you were talking about the like this confrontation of, coming into when Haumea asks us at this crossing, what would you like to replicate? And if we choose to come back, and there's this, she comes back with us. This really brought in the full moon for me, because the full moon is said to be in tropical Leo, which it is, but in living sky, where it is in the constellation, it was in Cancer, the Cancer constellation, which is directly connected to the mother. And the opposite axis to Cancer is Capricorn, which I associate Cancer and Capricorn to lineage. And it's so fascinating because Cancer, kind of in shadow, in astrology, is really associated with being emotionally connected to the past. And so I think it's so fascinating that the full moon, was squaring Haumea at this time. So yesterday, because the square is a confrontational aspect in astrology, it's actually meant to create friction and tension so we can see what needs to change. And so I feel like with this full moon, it's actually really inviting us, and Haumea is inviting us to see where we are wrapped up in what we cannot let go. And Haumea's like, can you really take a look at this? Because I'm coming back with you if you like to come back to this planet and experience it all again. So I feel like this is just so just amazingly timed for this conversation and for this gathering. And so just like Keoni said, it's so fascinating. When I was really getting into astrology, I was always gravitating toward the planetary bodies that are named after deities from indigenous cultures. And so when I found out that Haumea was a dwarf planet, I was like, oh, amazing. And just like Keoni said, crickets, like no downloads, like nothing. And it was so bizarre. And so really, I started noticing Haumea, like really paying attention to her placements and her alignments back in 2022. So in 2022, in tropical astrology, Haumea had just shifted into 0 degrees Scorpio in tropical. And this was such a big deal because Haumea takes a really long time to move through all of the constellations, but all of the signs in tropical astrology. She has, I think, like a 284-year orbit, which means she just takes her time to move through the signs. And so when she shifts signs in tropical astrology, that's like indicates a really big shift. And so she shifted into 0 degrees Scorpio on November 12th, 2022 at 11:22 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time. And so I was looking at this in 2023, and I realized, oh wait, there was a volcanic eruption that was really quite rare in November 2022. So I had to go and kind of look at all the things. And on November 27th, 2022, Mauna Loa had erupted on the Big Island for the first time in 38 years. And so I was like, huh. So I thought back, I was like, so there is an asteroid named after Pele. And Pele is another one of Haumea's daughters. And so I was like, I wonder where Pele was at the time of this volcanic eruption. So on November 27th, 2022, at 11:47 a.m., Pele entered into 0 degrees Scorpio and started to align with her mother. And 12 hours later, Mauna Loa erupted. And then 18 hours after that, Haumea and Pele aligned exactly at 0 degrees, 21 minutes of Scorpio. And this was also really fascinating because Kilauea was also erupting at the same time. So there was a dual eruption happening on Big Island. And what's so fascinating is the last time there was a dual eruption of Mauna Loa and Kilauea was in 1984. So I had to go back and look, and that was I went and looked at the chart for that, and Haumea and Pele were also aligned during that particular eruption. So I thought it was so interesting because we were bringing in the moons too of Hi'iaka and Namaka, and now we're bringing in Pele. So this is like this animation of Haumea with her daughters and her creations. And this is actually so deeply connected to the land of which they originate. And so I thought this was so interesting, the 0-degree alignment in Scorpio, because I started noticing I started having a lot of very precise 0-degree alignments since 2020 with a lot of the planets. So Jupiter and Saturn aligned at 0 degrees Aquarius in December 2020. We also have this upcoming Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries on February 20th. And so I was like, that's so interesting because Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune, Saturn is the father to Jupiter and to Neptune. And so these 0-degree alignments with these planets from Greek and Roman mythology, all at 0 degrees alignments, are activating the father line, the paternal line. And then we have Haumea and Pele activating the maternal line too at the 0 degrees alignments. And so what I really started looking at was I felt like these 0-degree alignments of these deities who are like familially connected. For me, this was a clue that tropical astrology is undergoing a massive shift. So for me, I took this as a sign that I really needed to start working with the living sky. So kind of looking beyond the tropical chart and actually putting my eyes on the stars and the sky and starting to work with astronomy software as well. And I felt this was really telling too, because Native Hawaiians and also Polynesians and also just humans in general, if you look back in your own ancestry, everyone has a deep connection to the sky, to the stars. And I feel like being able to put our eyes onto the stars in real time is going to bring us out of this kind of almost illusionary effect of the time that we see on the clock. So now we can actually come back into our bodies and actually relate to the sky. So yeah, and also I just wanted to mention that where Haumea is in the living sky, so she's at, I believe, 4 degrees Scorpio in tropical astrology, but in the living sky, she's actually in the Boots constellation, and she's near Arcturus. And Arcturus is a really important star in Hawaii. So it is the zenith star to Hawaii. And so the zenith star means that the star reaches its highest point in the sky, can't go any higher, and then it sets. And in wayfinding, which is like non-instrument navigation, so being able to get into a canoe for Polynesians, being able to go out into open ocean and without modern instrumentation, being able to find islands that are thousands of miles apart in the open ocean. They really pay attention to the rising and setting of stars. And so zenith stars are really important because it's basically like whenever how I associate it with it, it's if you see Arcturus in the sky high overhead, I envision Hawaii because it's going to be right overhead in Hawaii, telling you right where it's at. And so I thought it was so fascinating that Haumea is near this star that's pointing out her own homeland, where she's from. And then when she aligns with Pele, that's also activating that Arcturus or Hokulea star energy. And then we have these eruptions with Mauna Loa and Kilauea. So I was in deep awe of the precision of all of this. And also I just want to mention one last thing. So I think Julia, you'll mention this too, but so for wayfinding, I'm just going to kind of go back to wayfinding again. Nainoa Thompson, who is a Hawaiian master navigator, he was able to visually demarcate these star lines. Essentially what star lines are, it's like connects a star from the northern, like the northernmost point, and it goes and connects the dots essentially and goes down and connects into a southern hemisphere star or constellation. And there's 4 distinct star lines. So one rises, the other one culminates, the other one sets. And so you basically know, if you know the 4 star lines, you know where you're at in the canoe on the open ocean without instrumentation. And so where Arcturus is, the Arcturus star is in a very important star line, and it's called Ka'ivikuamo'o in Hawaiian. And Ka'ivikuamo'o means spine or backbone. And what is so important about this particular star line is that it actually connects Polaris, the North Star, and then follows this line of stars all the way down to the Crux constellation in the southern hemisphere, which points due south. And so it's basically the backbone of the sky, and that's where Haumea is at currently. She's in the backbone of the sky. And so I went to go look to see when she started kind of entering into and activating the Pa'iwi Kuomo'o star line with Polaris. And so she started to make her exact alignment with the North Star in 1899, which was right, I think, about 6 years after the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom. And for me, this felt like Haumea was kind of demarcating, and also Hi'iaka and Namaka were really kind of pointing out, because North Stars are definitely connected to being able to find your way, especially when things get difficult. And so Haumea and Hi'iaka and Namaka were really imprinting basically the sky to be able to hold this resonance for Native Hawaiians to remember who they are when the oppressive forces kind of came in to kind of try to take them out. And so I think it's so interesting because Haumea is making her way through the spine of the sky right now, and then she will end up making her alignments with the Crux stars in 2034, 2035. So for me, this is like Haumea's complete revolution, or completing a galactic circuit, brother. And for me, this feels like the culmination or the ending point to humans kind of taking over other humans and other living things. That oppressive kind of domination force is coming to a completion point. And since it's Haumea coming to a completion point, thanks for Keoni sharing what he shares, basically I feel like she's going to ask what we would like to replicate. And if we come to this point, do we want to replicate oppression and dominance, or are we ready to let it go? And I feel like that's the energy that we're in right now. And it's so rare too, because Haumea is only in this part of the sky every 284 years. So we're living through this really beautiful time with Haumea, and with being able to, come into a completion with what we're ready to come to a completion with. Yeah. And I think that is, all I have to share for now. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Can you hear me? Thank you so much, Natasha. I, like you, came to when Martha invited me, and thank you so much, by the way, for this invitation, Martha. When Martha invited me to co-create with you, I said, no, my goodness, I cannot possibly come. I'm not an expert on Haumea at all. She didn't speak to me yet. I don't know. How can I contribute? But I agreed to come as someone who is willing to listen and learn and honor the wisdom that is embodied through Keoni's lineage. And I love seeing his ancestors right behind him on top from above, and really feeling the wisdom and the stories that are coming through. And in preparation for today, I was personally curious about her journey and connection to the stars in our recent or current era. And as you just spoke of Arcturus, I would like to go a little bit back into 50s and 60s and looking at which stars she was conjuncting. And I found it quite interesting that in the late 50s, it was conjunct the heart of Leo, royal star Regulus. And there were many themes collectively in connection to awakening the heart and the royalty. There are many changes in royal families. And not only that, connection with awakening the heart, which then following the Regulus connection was Alpha Draconis star Thuban in the 60s, which I always connect with the frequency of sovereignty. And right around that time, when it was the Titus conjunct to Thuban, we had the hippie movement, which was all about sovereign love and freedom. And with that also, I I'm glad that I have now deeper understanding of the connection and manifestation through the two daughters, and the pulling and pushing forces, because in the 60s was it 60s where we had also assassination of Martin Luther King and President Kennedy. It's like the extremes of when we want to play that game and replicate what we feel most passionate about. If it is about fighting for sovereignty, fighting for love, fighting for this and that, then the extremes continue, and it's just never ending, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. So then we continue on with her connection to Arcturus in the 80s. And I feel like, sorry, not in the 80s, when we have generation born in the 80s that had Pluto conjunct Arcturus. Now Haumea has been activating through Haumean conjunction to Arcturus. Then for those born in 80s, their natal Pluto would be activated. So for example, you, Keone, I believe, have Arcturus conjunct Pluto. And coincidentally, when I looked at your website today, the beginning of the creation of your website, Keone, is 2017, which was around the time when Haumea was beginning her conjunction with the star Arcturus. So, and activating so many into our mission of living or returning to balance within. So you're speaking about Arcturus as a representation of the navigation. And I would like to speak to Arcturus from how I felt that frequency coming through people, because I learned the stars through witnessing their frequency coming through individuals during my 7 years of facilitating quantum healing, hypnosis, regression. And there are many experiences where my clients spontaneously connected with the Arcturian frequency. And that frequency to me feels as that ultimate unconditional love that is perfectly balanced in its ability to give and receive, and in its embodied experiential wisdom. And to me, that is the key to perfect ability to navigate anything, because I feel the Arcturian intelligence or consciousness is guiding us to return to that sacred connection from within, knowing that we are connected to source of all that is. And in that connection, we can navigate anything and everything, because we are at the center of the universe, understanding the cycles, understanding the order of nature, the principles of everything. And I find it so beautifully designed that Arcturus has been coming through to the embodied experience through generations. In 50s, late 50s, we have Neptune was conjunct Arcturus. There are many beautiful teachers that we would know in our community. Just one example would be Heather and Sword. She has Arcturus conjunct Neptune. So there is a beautiful connection there. And wasn't she speaking and creating beautiful videos, talking to Keone about Haumea? So I already mentioned the generation of the kids born in the 80s with Pluto on Arcturus. And there are few others where that frequency of Arcturian return to the center, understanding universal order experientially, and with that comes great peace as well. So as Haumea moves away from Arcturus, when we now see so many embodied sovereign leaders, teachers teaching authenticity, Haumea now communes with the early degrees of Scorpio, which has few more stars that are kind of closer to us, but in the backdrop is the Shapley attractor, which has been talked about a lot. And to me, it represents the pulling force in our known universe, whereas on the opposing end is the feminine principle of dipole repeller, the cosmic womb of creation. And what does Shapley do is pulling the everything that is created, all the fractals of source, on a journey to know themselves and to find meaning. And through finding meaning, we create memories and understanding and really discover who we really are. So while Haumea will be on Shapley, well, already 2024, 2025, but now then moving towards stars Surma in Virgo constellation, which is, when we look at the Virgin, it's at the base of her robe, and it is associated with a birth of a prophet. And isn't it beautiful how many of us are learning and rediscovering and remembering the true nature of who we are and how we relate with the world and the universe. We co-create. We are finding meaning in all that is. We are growing into peace in understanding the order of and nature of universe. So there are so many prophecies talking about the rebirth of Christ on earth. And many say it's through the collective, it's through all of us, it's within you and I and everyone else, guided from within. So the birth of a prophet, as Haumea speaks with star Surma in Virgo constellation. Then she moves on to star Kambalia at 6-7 degrees of Scorpio, but in the next few years. And that star, if I just think of a keyword for it, would be seeking forgiveness from God. In other way, when we get to that point on our journey where we have experiential understanding of all that is, and we know our true identity that Shapley helped revealing, we get to the core, to the essence of our being. We also, in retrospect, reflect on everything that was, is and will be. And there is a sense of, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, right? Experience. And with that, there's this beautiful ripple effect of healing the entire Akashic records of our known universe. And it's happening through every single one of us. We all help healing the soul records and the memories of this conscious, creative universe through this experience. And by the year 2033, 2034, 2035, Haumea will meet with star Arcturus at 11-12 degrees of Scorpio. And I find it fascinating that UK only had that download of Arcturus. Of course, Arcturus is conjunct your natal moon in your first house. I'm not surprised that occurred. And for anyone who didn't get a chance yet to watch Keoni's conversation with Heather Ensworth, that was just published, I believe, yesterday, and an incredible discovery or remembrance or aha, epiphany of how we get to a point, or how that star will help us get to the point of resurrection, as you, Keoni, kind of pointed briefly here. You might speak more to that, if you will. So I just find it's, my passion is to live in awe of universal design, be a witness, and marvel at the perfection of how everything is organized. And it gives me joyful peace. And as I live with that today, I'm so grateful for the experience of seeing the journey of cosmic I am manifesting through every single one of us. So the deeper understanding of Haumea today, for which I'm grateful for, is what if perhaps as she travels, as she connects with the mythology or the mythos of the stars that we received through many generations and through many different lenses that were passed down to us now in our current age, everyone who is born during the time when she connects with certain stars, that's how the saying, the stars are walking this earth right now, that maybe that's how it happens. She helps to manifest it. Like, we are the myths that we learned about for so long. We now are embodying them and acting them out, playing them out. So the question is, are we going to continue to live out that polarity endlessly, or, like UK only beautifully hinted, for us to actually it is complete, it is done. But perhaps by 2033, 2034, 5, we will have that embodied wisdom of knowing what the answer is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia. Shall I go? Okay. So yes, I'm going to bring up some slides for a minute just to talk about a little bit of the astronomy of the Kuiper Belt being, but I wanted to speak to some of the themes here, especially what you were talking about, Natasha, with this Haumea maybe in a sense helping us come to the reality that we are at this moment where we can choose, are we going to continue the kind of the domination pattern that we've been in, or are we going to switch that, right? Because I think that's even this gathering is, for me, an attempt to be part of us saying no, stop. I don't want to keep doing that. And for me, everybody, I obviously encourage you to feel what feels true for you. But for me, when I look out at the world and I see all the things that are bothering me, really what it all, the essence of what it all comes down to for me is the pattern of domination and dehumanizing other humans and approaching all kinds of life forms as something other than life forms, or having a sense of superiority over various other beings, right? So, so one thing that I'm really personally trying to sit with is the ways in which, it's really easy for me to look out there and witness all those imbalances in the world and all the horrific things happening and keep my focus out there. But what I recognize is that even in what we might consider tiny, tiny ways of interacting with each other, with the cosmos, with the earth, we are choosing in every moment whether we are replicating domination paradigm or not, or coming into a more of a, if you want to say, egalitarian, deep listening, love approach. I don't know what word, I don't want to like label it, but those are some of the words coming to me. Because I can just speak for myself, right? That I was born in Thailand and I lived in a family that was a wonderful family, and we were in a colonialist society. I grew up in primarily Bangladesh, Pakistan, and then Kenya, all colonized countries. And I was white. And I was, so I grew up in a colonizer scenario. And so I've been really personally working very hard to be really radically honest with myself about how I still carry that colonizer way. And so that's part of why it's so important to me that when I'm holding space for being with the cosmos, that I very consciously, as much as I possibly can, try to witness when I might be perpetuating that kind of dynamic, and really try hard to not do that. Because every single way that we interact with anything then has a ripple effect throughout existence, right? And so I feel like even this gathering hopefully is a moment where we can even witness that in our own being, and make a choice in every single moment. So I just want to really explicitly name that. And it's like amazing, getting chills. It's so beautiful. So, right. So not trying to have the answers, I think, is actually huge. So like Julia, when you said to me, a few weeks ago or whatever, I'm not an expert in Haumea. Oh, I can't be there. That doesn't make any sense. And I said to you, that's the entire point. That is literally the whole entire point. So I just want to say thank you to showing up, even though you feel like not the expert, because that's the point, right? That we're here to listen and to flip that script, because we don't want to keep, I speak for myself, but I don't want to keep ugh, it's against everything in my being to perpetuate that domination expert way of being. It's not cool. Yeah. Okay. Um, Beautiful. All right. And I also want to say the way though that Keone, you talk about that we're all authorities in a way, right? That's different from being an expert, if that makes sense. Yeah, to me. Great. So, yeah, so I have some slides that I made regarding the astronomy of this amazing being. I'm going to bring those up, and I'm going to say on a practical level that all of you who signed up for this free gathering also have been enrolled now in a free Haumea course, quote unquote. So on my website, livingonelight.com, if you haven't joined yet, you can sign up for free there for this course. And I'm going to be putting this recording there. It's also on YouTube, obviously. Um, I've also put the contact information for Keone, Julia, and Natasha there, and I've put some links there to some of the like the NASA stuff about the astronomy of Haumea, and I'm going to be putting my slides there, and then anything else the three of you want to share, I'm happy to put there, but then the real purpose of having this course, it's weird to call it even a course. I don't know what to call it. A community sharing space is really more what I would call it. So I would love today and then over time for any of us to use that space to add in what comes alive for you with your relationship with Haumea from this time together today, but again over time. And if you have links to other resources that you think would be helpful for everybody else, I would love for you to share that in there. And I also have an equivalent free course for Lelea Kuhanua, which is an art cloud being. Anyway, and I'm hoping to do these over time. So like the next one I feel called to be with actually is Makemake. So I'm going to put it out there to the universe right now. If anybody has any connection to, or you happen to be of the lineage of Rapa Nui, or called Easter Island, um, I would love it if you want to connect. And that's the one I feel is calling next to me. And I'll show you actually fascinating astrologically and astronomically what's going on with Makemake, because yeah, it's literally following along right behind Haumea. I didn't know that. So cool. Um, okay, so I'm going to briefly show you these slides. Okay. Yeah. I feel like the most important thing today is, kind of what's already been shared and also what's coming alive for you individually. But just to give, this is a beautiful image that Keone shared with me by Susan Boulay of Haumea. I love it. So beautiful. Okay, here's Haumea. So this is an artist representation. This is not a photo. But this is Haumea and then her two moons. And Keone or anybody, do you happen to know which one is which?
I don't. I don't know which. I know that one is slightly larger than the other, but I can't think of which one is the
I think the biggest one is Hi'iaka.
yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
I have it in my next slide, so we'll come back to this once. Yeah, and as I'm going to talk about in a minute, Haumea is the only known Kuiper belt being that is known to have rings. So in addition to her two moons, she also has rings, which I find really beautiful. Okay, and you want to say something about that? Or
Oh, I was just feeling, the rings is that voltage created by the alternating currents of those moons.
ooh, beautiful. Mm, amazing. Yeah. And here is just a picture showing the other. So Haumea is one of the dwarf planets, and here are the other ones. Pluto is now considered a dwarf planet, Makemake, Eris, and Ceres. Ceres is the only one of these that is in the asteroid belt. So I'm about to show you in a minute the difference between the asteroid belt and the Kuiper belt. But just keep in mind, so Ceres is the biggest of the asteroids, and the asteroid is way bigger than all the rest of the asteroids in the asteroid belt. She's gigantic relatively compared to them. And then all these other beings, Pluto, Eris, Haumea, and Makemake, are all part of the Kuiper belt. So very different placement in our solar system. And you can see here's Haumea and how differently shaped she is compared to the other ones. The other ones are spherical, and Haumea is this egg shape. Like Pam Gregory, says it's kind of like this cosmic joke, shaped like an egg, and so much connected to all this mother energy. Yeah. Okay, so here is, for anybody who isn't aware of the kind of the layout of our solar system, just to contextualize where Haumea is. So here's our sun. Here's the inner planets, including the Earth. Here is the asteroid belt. The asteroid belt is between Mars and Jupiter. And so that's where Ceres is. So Ceres is the dwarf planet that's in the asteroid belt. And then you come all the way out past the orbits of the other planets. So Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And then the Kuiper belt is the beginning of what is called the trans-Neptunian quote unquote objects. And that includes anything past the orbit of Neptune. And that includes Pluto, which actually sometimes crosses into the orbit of Neptune. But anyway, that's a different conversation. And then here's the Kuiper belt. And beyond the Kuiper belt is the Oort cloud. And the Oort cloud is where Sedna is, where Leleakuhanua is, etc. But Haumea is in the Kuiper belt. So on the outskirts of our solar system. And again, I'm going to put all these slides in that free course so you can look at any and all of them more slowly if and when you want to. Yeah, and I just give another depiction of the Kuiper belt. Here's our inner solar system. Here's the orbits of our main planets. Here's the orbit of Pluto. Here's the Kuiper belt. It's considered this donut-shaped space around our solar system. And here's what's really, really cool about Haumea and Makemake. So most of the solar system, the main planets of the solar system, orbit on what is called the ecliptic plane of our solar system, right? So Melanie Reinhardt talks about that ecliptic plane being kind of like a fried egg, like a flat-ish surface. And so most of the planets are traveling around the sun, you can imagine, on that area of the fried egg. But then when you get to Pluto and all these Kuiper belt beings, and then definitely when you get out to the Oort cloud, they are not. They are not following that fried egg place. So it's like, I don't know if you imagine like ice skaters on a fried egg or something like that. That's what most of the planets are doing. And then you get out to Pluto and all these other ones, and they are not ice skating on that fried egg. They are doing their own thing. Pluto's orbit is tilted like this. It's really elliptical. And Makemake is even more elliptical than Pluto, and Haumea and Makemake both are at a very tilted angle, their orbit, and very elliptical, and they kind of parallel each other, which is fascinating, given that I was feeling really sure that Makemake needed to be next. I'm like, what's that about? It's really interesting. And Haumea is, just slightly ahead of Makemake in where it is in that orbit. So like, I don't know what that's about, but that's really, really cool that was the one I felt like needs to come next. Okay, and again, here is the orbit of, here's our sun in the center here. Here are the main planets. Here is the orbit of Pluto, this white line, and then Haumea is here. Makemake is here, again, sort of following along behind Haumea. And so just to give some basic astronomical details, So Haumea, you can look up Haumea with the number 136108 if you want to look on astro.com. And it was Haumea was quote unquote discovered by two astronomy teams at the same time. So one in Spain and one at Caltech in California, United States. And anyway, there's a whole backstory that you can read about online of they kind of were vying for who was going to be considered the discoverer. But regardless, they both kind of came across Haumea in 2003, 2004. And what I think is really cool is, but I'm not an expert in this at all, but the Spanish team originally was going to name Haumea, I don't know how to pronounce this, Atejina, maybe? And who is a goddess of renewal, interestingly. But she was given the name Haumea by that Caltech, California group. And so like you were saying, Natasha, Haumea has an orbit of about 284 Earth years. She's orbiting at a 28-degree incline to the ecliptic, a very elliptical. And another thing really cool about her is that she rotates on her axis every 3.9 hours. So one day on Haumea is a little less than 4 of our hours. So that's how she gets that egg shape, because she's spinning so fast, really, really, really fast. And that's really fascinating, Keone, with your idea with the moons and the circuit. But I don't know if there's anything arising for you around that you want to say, or
I feel like it could definitely expedite that speed with having those two, functioning like these two magnets that can expedite her in the center of both of those alternating currents.
Awesome. Beautiful. Yeah, she's the only dwarf planet with known rings. And of course, as we've just heard about, my most amazing favorite thing is these moons, right? So beautiful. Okay, so Hiaka is the larger outer moon and Namaka is the smaller inner moon. And then, as we've been talking about, she's currently exiting the Boots constellation, having already passed Arcturus. And oops, back up. Okay, so here is Haumea right now. So she's exiting the Boots constellation. Here's Arcturus. And for people who are not familiar, Arcturus on your astrology chart will be at around 24 degrees of Libra. If you put Arcturus over here onto the ecliptic, this red line, it would be quote unquote conjunct Spica. Obviously, Spica and Arcturus are not actually together, but on an astrology chart, they're both at 24 degrees of Libra, which Julia happens to be my north node, 24 Libra. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. And Pele, I just looked up Pele, the asteroid is currently at 25 Libra. Yeah, amazing. Okay, and then, hello. This thing froze. 1 second, sorry. I have to get that back, but I'm about to show you, once I get back my slides, that our Makemake, yeah, here we go. Okay, here's Makemake currently, following right behind where Haumea is. Okay, so Haumea is exiting the Boots constellation. Makemake is just about to enter it and will be, with Arcturus as it makes its way through the Boots constellation. So I don't have any explanation for that. If anybody has any thoughts about that, that's great. And yeah, Makemake clearly on my mind. Okay, this I'm going to point to, you guys can explore on your own. This is one of the links I put in the free course. You can go to the NASA website, and you can, it's a 3D interactional model of Haumea. And you can do this with actually many, many, all the planets, and then many of the Kuiper Belt beings, etc. So that's a cool thing to be with if you want. This is just one of those depictions I found. I don't know how accurate it is, but of Haumea and then Namaka. And does this look accurate-ish or not?
It could be a poetic reference to it. It looks more loyal to Pele.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. And then I'm not going to go through all of this right now because I feel like it's not where our time should be spent right this second. But again, in my slides, if you guys want to go and look at the slides or download them in the free course, you can. And for those of you who are really into astrology and the details, I have a bunch of charts in there relating to Haumea. This is her discovery chart. I'm just going to go through this and highlight what I think is actually going to be helpful to us here. When I looked at those discovery charts, they didn't really speak to me, but this one did. This is the chart of the date when astronomers, once they quote unquote discovered her in 2003, 2004, they looked back at previous photos and they realized there were photos of her from this date, March 22nd, 1955, when, very interestingly, Haumea was precisely almost like with almost to the minute, precisely conjunct Pluto in Leo. So like, wow. That so
And
her like,
conjunct star Alphard in Hydra, the Alpha
oh,
Hydra constellation, rise of the feminine catalyst, and
really,
the sacred wisdom that's been
ooh,
hidden.
amazing. Beautiful. And not too far from Regulus, right? And the South Node this year is going to enter Leo, so like igniting that. But yeah, so the connection between Haumea and Pluto feels so important. Currently, Pluto, as we know, is squaring Haumea. So and we hear lots of these themes when we're talking about Haumea that are very similar to Plutonian themes. So that's just, yeah, fascinating. And what's also really, really amazing about this chart to me, the sun is at 1 degree of Aries, which is almost exactly where we're going to have that Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th. And the sun in this chart is squaring its nodes. So the nodes in this chart are 0, Cancer, and Capricorn. So again, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th is going to exactly be squaring the nodes of this chart and on the sun of this chart, which squares anyway. So the Saturn Neptune conjunction plays a really pivotal role in, like, if this were a person, you'd be going, wow, this is going to be a very big year for you, you know. Yeah, so there's so much there that could be explored. And let me just see if there's any. Yeah, and then I'll just touch on this, but I feel like this is a theme maybe we come back to over time over the coming few years. One thing that really jumped out at me is that this year, Chiron is going to barely enter Taurus, but then next year, 2027, this gets really important. 2027, 2028, um, Chiron will fully move into Taurus. And when it does in 2027, how it's going to oppose Haumea 3 times. Um, and at the same time, Haumea and Pluto will still be squaring each other. So basically, in 2027 and 2028, there's going to be this very powerful dance between Haumea, Pluto, and Chiron and the nodes of the moon. Because the nodes of the moon will by then be in Leo and Aquarius, and the north node will be coming to Pluto. So something about, again, this is like, I feel like something we feel into maybe as a collective more deeply over time. But something about that Chiron in Taurus, like healing of our bodies, healing of our relationship to the earth, healing of our relationship to our bodies, healing of our, all of those kind of related things. The Haumea Pluto dance with that is going to be humongous. And I have all 3 conjunction charts again in these slides, but the last thing I want to say here is what's so amazing to me is that when the North Node is going to be exactly conjunct Pluto. That's a big, 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 gigantic transit for all of us, right? North Node conjunct Pluto. That's going to be happening on November 15th, 2027 at 4 degrees 56 minutes of Aquarius, which basically is, not too far from where Pluto is now, and also Haumea is currently squaring that degree. But when the North Node is exactly conjunct Pluto, that is the one day after the nodes precisely squaring Haumea. So basically, again, this Pluto Haumea dance is huge, and also not only huge in and of itself, but when you involve the nodes, right? Like I go, wow, okay, there's something about our collective destiny or intention or opportunity where Haumea is a big player, along with Pluto and along with Chiron. Yeah. So
I feel like we are training collectively to become our own source of inspiration and navigation of the chaos. We are collectively training each other. We are practicing with each other how to read the patterns, how to understand the cycles. We are like that return of a prophet or birth of a prophet feels like collectively we all become the seers, the sibyls, and the navigating that experience, and then also learning how powerful our words and thoughts and the law of attraction is going to be so on point for how powerfully we create. And Haumea is like really showing us you're creating exactly what you are giving me. I'm going to continue to do that. And it feels like it's peak of polarity, and even her own state of such a fast spin that actually essentially from that peak it gets to unity point because they spin so fast that it just becomes oneness. And if when you mention on the Makemake that you're kind of looking for what's coming there, why is Makemake following Haumea, based on Alan Clay's huge amount of research on these planetoids, Makemake in his understanding is high octave of Uranus, kind of systemic consciousness, whereas Haumea is about unity consciousness through that peak of polarity, helping us realize experientially that it's never ending, but unity is the answer. And then Makemake follows through all these star connections and mythologies to help us actually through that embodied wisdom to bring new systems in place that are aligned with universal order. So perhaps that could be what it is. Who knows?
I would love to add something too, if I can.
I just want to say
Yeah.
we are technically almost at our time, but how are the three of you on time? Because yeah, awesome. I'm good to keep going, and I really, really, really want to I would love to hear what you want to say, anybody, but also I want to have a few minutes to at least help us drop into being with the being. So, but you guys are okay if we keep going? Yeah. Okay. Yes, Natasha, go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, the discovery chart, the 2004 discovery chart of Haumea. I also did nothing really jumped out at me as well, but then I added Pele and she was conjunct Haumea at the time of the 2004 discovery chart. So it's like Pele, I think it's so interesting because Pele has become kind of universal in a way. She has kind of reached global kind of recognition. When people think of Hawaii, they think of Pele. And so I think Pele is this activation point of like returning to the Haumea and Hi'iaka and Namaka energy, because Pele is kind of this force that's attracting everybody to her. And so she's bringing her attention to her mother and her sisters and her brothers and Hawaii itself. And then also the eruption that happened for Mauna Loa on November 27th, 2022, when Pele and Haumea aligned at 0, Scorpio, and tropical. The way that I interpreted that was it felt like mythology was coming to life, like the legends and the myths that kind of existed in kind of just fantasy or storytelling. It just kind of started to come to life. I felt like that alignment just kind of activated mythology to come to life on the planet. And also, I just found out, so Chief of War is a show that Jason Momoa put together and filmed, and it was basically filmed in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but also in Hawaii. And they filmed this huge epic scene in the last part of the show on Apple TV. And they started filming on the day Mauna Loa erupted. And it had to be in Hawaii. He kept saying it had to be in Hawaii. And it was this particular story he was telling was pretty much resurrecting or having this story come to life that has been kind of in the collective memory of Hawaii, but not necessarily the globe. So Jason Momoa was able to bring the Native Hawaiian narrative told by Native Hawaiians to the global community in a really big way. And this was also the first show that really showcased Olelo Hawaii, the Hawaiian language, which almost neared extinction because of colonization. And so I actually remember talking to my my father-in-law again, and he was very surprised by the attention that Native Hawaiian language was getting on a global scale, because he grew up in a time when it was illegal to speak it. And so he was really shamed into not learning his own language. So when I told him that this was happening, it kind of blew his mind that people were actually honoring this language. And it actually started to help him become more comfortable with his own ancestry, because he's always kind of felt out of alignment because it was so shamed while he was growing up. So I feel like with Hawaii in particular, there is this really amazing example of like this kind of force coming in and dominating and almost completely wiping out an entire culture. But there is a perseverance to this particular land, to these people, and there this example of what it looks like to persevere and also rebirth their culture. And so I think it's so beautiful that this Hawaii gets so much attention too. And bringing in Makemake, there was a solar eclipse at the end of 2024, I believe. It was the last eclipse of the year, and that particular eclipse path went through Rapa Nui, and Makemake was exactly conjunct that particular eclipse. And so for me, that felt like there is this activation of the Polynesian triangle, because Hawaii is the top part of the triangle. Rapa Nui is I think, southeastern part. And so I'm really looking at Aotearoa now in terms of possibly a new celestial body is discovered, and like a deity from their particular culture gets named. But there is something happening with this activation of the Polynesian triangle, in my opinion, based on what the astrology is showing. And I feel like Polynesia, Melanesia, Micronesia are this just kind of hub of remembrance on the globe. And it's all getting activated by the astrology and the astronomy of it all. And so, yeah, so I'm really excited to kind of see what comes about in the coming years with all of these activations of Haumea and Pele and Makemake and the unknown. I feel like the Aotearoa Maori deity is coming in soon. So yeah.
I feel like I need to go through and redo all the charts with Pele in there. Seriously, actually, for real. Yeah. Keone, do you want to say something?
Oh, that was so great. Thank you, Julia, Natasha, and Martha for sharing all of that. I feel with this Haumea Pluto relationship, it's like bringing me back to what Haumea asked us, right? It's like, what's your story? And it feels like with Plutonian energy, it's all about, right, making assessments. And so like, it's time for us to now tell our story rather than perpetuating a story. And so I work with the spinal cord. And when we come to the cervical vertebrae, the very opening of the cervical vertebrae, which is considered our spiritual self, it's the code C7, which is involution, meaning there's no more growth to be made. And Hi'iaka is that daughter that she loves to grow and grow and grow, but then it becomes excessive. And with Namaka is all about extinguishing, extinguishing. And so it's about being more simple and about coming into a place where now it's time for us to actually make an assessment and offer that story to Haumea. And then that will actually complete the circuit, complete all of that. I do want to touch on Julia. It's so great that you're bringing in Arcturus so strongly because, the asterism, right, is the diamond of Virgo with Arcturus. And that represents precision. And precision is so important when we're talking about making assessments and completing a story, because that also means Arcturus holds the codes of the reconciliation of amnesia. And so as we come into creating an assessment of our story to also harness the power of Arcturus so that we can come into that diamond consciousness within the diamond of Virgo, and we can resolve amnesia so that when we offer our story, it's sincere, it's honest, and it's complete. And so I love the design that we're all being shown and invited into. And I feel like humanity, we're on the brink of a completion event, and it just feels great.
Amazing. So the one thing I would really love to have time here to do is for us all, everybody, to have a chance to come into our own relationship, our own presence with the being of Haumea. I mean, I could do that, but Keone, anybody, do you feel called to do that? To hold space in that way?
Um, Here's what feels maybe good
Yeah.
and maybe appropriate is to complete today with the same prayer that we open with so that we function as an alternating current and we
Beautiful.
it. Does that feel good?
Yeah. Awesome.
Wonderful. So keeping in heart and mind that this is a 20,000-year-old prayer, that we can honor the energy of Haumea and honor a lot of the things that were shared today, but also honoring what comes up for you personally, and for you to place that on the altar that is for Haumea. And perhaps that it's time for all of us to give the mohai, or the ho'okupu, as we say in my culture, the offering that we can place on the altar for Haumea. And in gratitude and in reverence, he ino no Haumea. With our hands in kulike, right hand over our pu'uvai, our heart, left hand over our na'au, over our sacral. This 20,000-year-old prayer in the Mu dialect, and I will translate it in English once again. Ikshe at nai na ate apo, te kai mai la rihi o leva, ikshel harat matveis. Iho mai tawa leva leva, mere ra anui nui. Et Hawait, et haida, et kaido, e lat no ko i lainta, Shakespeare nawa. Lakavai, a ma ra Haumea. From the junction, to fasten the hoop, the stars still stand in the upper space, and the transcendence remains wide and free. Coming is the dark cloud and the rainbow, at the point of Hawaii, of Haida, of Hokkaido. Courage is now required to become free of the involvement. Breaking away is the water, in reverence of Haumea. Aloha ma, aloha ma, aloha ma.
Amazing. The difference for me between the first time we did that and then this time was like, wow. Wow. Incredible. All right. Well, thank you everybody who's here on Zoom with us, everybody who's here on YouTube with us now or in anytime in the future. And again, what I would really love, I'm gonna put in the free course. I need another word for this, but court space. The Zoom, I will put the Zoom chat in there. And then also, please, I would love, love, love over time, now, today, anytime, for you to come and share what did this feel like for you? What does it feel like being with Haumea for you anytime in the future? I really want it to be a community receptacle or like sacred honoring space. So please do that. And you can obviously share on the YouTube video comments as well. You can share in the free living the one light community space. You can share anywhere you want to share, go for it. And if you are not familiar with any of these amazing three beings, I will be putting all of their contact information with the video. It's already in the course. You can connect with any and all of them. Obviously, I highly recommend all three of them, more than I can say. And yeah, any other, am I forgetting anything? Any other last thing anybody wants to say?
I do.
Hmm.
What an absolute privilege to be part of this event. And I have my deepest gratitude, want to pay my deepest gratitude to Keone and Natasha for representing the wisdom held on the southern hemisphere, those beautiful islands surrounded by this mighty ocean, waiting patiently while the northern hemisphere was conquering and establishing what should be, even astrology, so dominated by northern hemisphere. And this feels so good, like my heart is overflowing with joy that feels tender for the opportunity from us to the northern hemisphere brain to now learn how to come into right relationship with the stars, with the cosmos, with the wisdom that is present within us. Thank you so, so much. And thank you, Martha, for being the instrument for making this happen. And thank you all so much, everyone who is joining us in this co-creation and new beginnings.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe a longer conversation another time. I just named that was coming up in me as you're saying that it's like a desire to apologize to the land of Haumea. The Haumea. Well, I'm about to say Hawaii, but it came out Haumea. And just, yeah, I don't know, just be present with my own grief around it and love, like pure love for it. So, yeah, wonderful. Okay. More again soon. Thank you all so, so much. Beautiful.